Hey,
Hey,
how are you doing today?
I'm well.
Are you ready to answer some questions?
I'm ready.
Who are you?
My name is Keith Cozart, and I teach music here at Earlham College.
What do your students call you?
Well, here at Earlham College, we go by on a first name basis, so they call me Keith.
Where are we on campus right now?
We are in the lovely CVPA, otherwise known as the Center for Performing Arts.
What's one thing your students might be surprised to learn about you?
That I'm an introvert.
What's one thing you've been surprised to learn about a student?
I'm surprised to learn that my students have this very robust life outside of my coursework with them.
What's your area of research?
I'm a percussionist, so I basically bang on stuff.
How did you get into that?
That's a good question. My brother was also a drummer when I was a kid, and when I was about 4 years old, there was an encyclopedia, like a hardbound encyclopedia, and he had left his drumsticks out. And I started playing with his drumsticks on the encyclopedia, and it all started from there.
What does your education in this field look like?
I have degrees. But really my education has been through real life experience.
What do you like to nerd out about unrelated to your field?
Oh, home improvement, always. Home improvement, just like different ways of like fixing something.
And if you're an Earlham student, how would you use your epic advantage?
Study abroad for sure, and probably an instrument that's specifically new to me, so I would definitely want to study abroad. That's key.
And what's your greatest professional accomplishment?
Oh, that's easy. It's my students. When they come back to me and they tell me things that they're doing that's amazing in life, that's the one. That's my greatest accomplishment. It fills me with huge amounts of joy.
Oh, that's sweet. And what is your greatest personal accomplishment?
My children.
And where did you know you wanted to be a professor?
I didn't. That's a longer story, but I'll tell you a little bit about it, but in a very brief story. So I had a professor that wore an eye patch. His name was Dr. Copley, and Dr. Copley once called me into his office and he said, "What's your major?" And I said, "My major is music performance." And he said, "That not music education?" And I said, "No." And he said, "That might change." And it did.
And what is your favorite class to teach?
My favorite class to teach is the last class of the semester. And let me tell you why. That's an interesting response because I love all of my classes. But my favorite class of the semester is the last of the semester because it's the opportunity that I can completely let loose with my students and I share reflections on them and they reflect.
How big are your classes on average?
Usually between 10 and 25, but I teach one-on-one lessons, so sometimes it's one-on-one. But I think my larger classes are around 25, but usually in that age range.
Are there research opportunities available for students through the music department?
Yeah, that's a good question. The answer is yes, and that means also the answer is always. We're always researching here, I feel, but I would say most specifically through our off-campus programs.
And what's one thing you love about Earlham students?
There's a lot to answer there. I think what I love the most about Earlham students is their natural inquisitiveness.
And what's your favorite spot to grab a bite in Richmond?
Oh, Gulzar's by far, yeah. Indian restaurant.
What's the hardest thing about being a professor?
The hardest thing about being a professor is, I'm gonna have to think about that question.
What's the most interesting thing you've learned recently?
That doing interviews like this is actually pretty difficult.
What's a book everybody should read?
Oh, for sure. Let me show you. Everybody should read Sonjata, the Epic of Old Mali. It's the original Lion King story, but way better.
And if you could take someone else's class at Earlham, what would you take?
Oh, I would take a course from either Joanne Swanger or Jean Hembrick. It doesn't matter which.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
That I'm patient.
And what's one thing you'd like to see change in higher education?
The cost. It's got to go somewhere other than up.
What's the most rewarding part of your job?
It's easy to say that the students are rewarding a part of, most rewarding part of my job, but there's something more specific about that. The students are the most rewarding part because I get new energy from them every academic year.
What's one thing you hope students take away from your class?
That their voice matters.
Do you think Earlham is a diverse campus?
Yes, I see it in my classes every semester.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
It was from my dad, and I have lots of bits of advice that I've received, but one was specifically stands out. My dad would say, don't force a permanent fix on a temporary problem.
That's pretty good advice.
Thanks.
What advice would you give a student coming to Earlham?
That they should definitely utilize travel abroad opportunities, always. Travel abroad, and also make sure their voice is heard.
What's your favorite spot on campus?
We're in it right now. I mean, just take a look around. What's not to like? It's like a visual candy, you know, right? All these instruments, this is the spot. This is the studio for percussion, and it's my favorite spot on campus.
What do you think is special about Earlham?
It's diversity.
Why should everyone watching this video apply to come here?
Because Quakers are good teachers. I truly believe that. Yeah, I wasn't told. I was told this by somebody else. So Quakers are good teachers, and I learned this on a red-eye flight to Brazil, and it was spoken to me from somebody who didn't hardly speak English. He was a Brazilian professor. He was writing a methodology on teaching practices, and the only English words he said to me after our very brief conversation, trying our best to understand each other, was, "Quakers are good teachers," and I believe it.
Thanks, Keith.
You're welcome.